The screen of my phone lit up the dark kitchen at exactly 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The text message glared up at me like a loaded weapon. It read, "I am hosting an executive retreat at the Tahoe Cabin this weekend for my investors. Have it deep cleaned, stock the fridge with premium bourbon, and leave the keys under the mat. Do not be there. You will ruin the optics." My lungs locked up. I stared at the glowing white bubble. The sheer audacity freezing the air in the room. My husband, Daniel, walked in, took one look at my face, and stopped dead in his tracks. I handed him the phone. The battle lines were drawn. "My name is Megan. I am 36 years old, and I teach high school English for my entire life. My father, Warren, treated my existence as a mild inconvenience, right up until the moment I had something he could use to boost his own reflection. That something was the Lake Tahoe property. Warren loved to tell his country club friends that his daughter owned an $850,000 luxury retreat. He loved to imply that he had funded it, guided me, and made it all possible. He omitted the reality. Daniel and I bought that property 7 years ago as a rotting, distressed foreclosure for $300,000. We spent every single summer and every holiday weekend pouring our own blood and sweat into those floorboards. We sanded the wood until our hands blistered. We hung the drywall. We replaced the shattered pipes. We built our sanctuary with agonizing physical labor. Warren never lifted a hammer. He never offered a dime. He only showed up when the dust was cleared and the lake view was ready to be photographed. Now, Warren was desperate. He had recently retired, but his ego demanded a second act. He was courting a massive private equity firm, trying to secure a $150,000 consulting contract to prove he was still a heavy hitter. To close the deal, he needed to project wealth, stability, and power. He decided my home was the perfect stage for his illusion. The text message was not a request from a father. It was an eviction notice from a man who viewed his children as unpaid property managers. He laughed at my career choice years ago. He told me teaching was a glorified babysitting gig for people who lacked ambition. He told me I would never build anything of real value. He broke my spirit then. Today, dealing with entitled, tantrum-throwing teenagers every single day has made me completely immune to his bullying. I know exactly how to handle a bully. You do not negotiate. You remove their audience. I ignored the family group chat where my siblings, Ashley and Jason, were already sending clapping emojis, praising Dad for his big business moves. They were his golden children, his dedicated echo chamber. I opened my smart home application. With 3 taps on the screen, I changed every digital lock on the property. Then I opened LinkedIn. Warren had arrogantly forwarded me an email months ago, boasting about the specific executives he was wooing. The lead partner's name was Arthur Vance. I found Arthur Vance's professional profile. I attached a downloaded PDF of the county property deed. I typed a single, undeniable message. Mr. Vance, I am the legal owner of the Tahoe property Warren Reynolds is claiming to host you at this weekend. Attached is the public deed. He does not have permission to be there. I hit send. Friday afternoon arrived. The security camera application on my phone chimed. I watched the live feed as Warren's luxury rental SUV pulled up to the gated community entrance. 2 other black cars idled behind him. The security gate stayed firmly down. The guard stepped out of the booth, shaking his head. Warren's face turned the color of a bruised plum. My phone began to ring. I answered on the second ring, my voice dead calm. You do not own the house. Warren turned around. He began screaming, his voice cracking with panicked rage, demanding I open the gate, threatening to disown me, threatening to ruin my life. I cut the call. I let the silence return to my kitchen. An hour later, Warren's name popped up in the family group chat. He spun a masterpiece of manipulation. He told Ashley and Jason that the retreat was relocated to a luxury resort because I was suffering from a severe manic episode. He claimed I was having a mental breakdown, extorting him, and holding his property hostage out of spite. My siblings immediately flooded my phone with venomous messages, calling me sick, cruel, and a disgrace to the family. Warren thought he had won. He thought he had saved face with his investors by painting me as the unstable, hysterical daughter. He assumed I would retreat in shame. He forgot who he was dealing with. I knew a narcissist never accepts public humiliation. He would try to force my hand to prove to those men that he was in control. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the county sheriff's office. I walked up to the dispatch desk and filed a formal trespass warning and a cease and desist order, explicitly naming Warren Reynolds. The deputy stamped the paperwork and entered it into the dispatch system. The family dispute loophole was officially closed. If Warren stepped foot on my land, he was not a misguided father. He was a documented intruder. Sunday morning broke over the lake. The water was perfectly still at 10 o'clock. My phone erupted with motion alerts. Warren had not left Tahoe to keep his lie alive. He had spun a new story to the investors. He told them the front gate was jammed due to a contractor error. But he had arranged an exclusive VIP lake tour. He rented a pontoon boat, put it on his maxed out credit card, and bypassed the community gate entirely via the water. The live camera feed showed the boat bumping against my private dock. Warren stepped off, gesturing grandly to the cabin. Arthur Vance and 3 other men followed, looking uneasy. Warren marched up to the back patio. He tried the smart lock. The red light flashed. He tried again. Red light. The investors shifted their weight. Warren's mask began to slip. To prove the house was his. To prove he had the ultimate authority. He bent down, picked up a heavy landscaping rock, and hurled it through my sliding glass door. The glass shattered with a sickening crash. The investors flinched, stepping backward in horror. I dialed emergency services instantly. I gave the dispatcher the address and the active trespass order number. Beside me, Daniel pulled up the camera dashboard. He did not say a word. He just pressed the 2-way audio alarm button. A deafening, piercing siren blasted from the patio speakers. Warren froze, dropping his hands to his ears. The investors scrambled back toward the dock, realizing they were standing in the middle of a crime scene. Warren was paralyzed in the center of the patio, surrounded by broken glass, completely trapped by the wailing siren. 10 minutes later, 2 sheriff deputies swarmed the dock. The sirens cut off, leaving only the sound of the wind and Warren's frantic, breathless lies. He pointed at the house, swearing it was his, swearing he just lost the code, swearing his daughter was crazy, The deputies checked their radio. They confirmed the trespass order. The metal handcuffs clicked sharply around Warren's wrists. The camera captured every drop of sweat on his forehead, every twitch of his jaw. He looked wildly at Arthur Vance, begging him to make a call, begging him to vouch for his character. Mr. Vance looked at the shattered glass, looked at the man in handcuffs, and pulled out his cell phone. He did not call a lawyer to help Warren. He called his firm's legal department, citing the strict morality and background clause in their pending agreement. Vance voided the $150,000 consulting contract right there on my dock. Warren lost his freedom, his reputation, and his financial future in exactly 60 seconds. The deputies hauled him away. The investors left under police escort. The boat was impounded. That evening, my phone vibrated constantly. Ashley and Jason left blistering voicemails, crying and screaming that I had ruined our father's life, that I had destroyed the family name. I did not type out an explanation. I did not defend myself. I sent them both a single photograph of the shattered glass covering my living room floor. Then I permanently blocked their numbers. I tossed the phone onto the kitchen counter. Daniel handed me a broom. We drove up the mountain that night. We stood in the cold air blowing through the broken door frame, and we swept up the glass together. The physical door was broken, but the psychological house was finally completely mine. The silence in the cabin was deafening, and it was the most peaceful sound I had ever heard. The legal system moved slowly, but it moved with absolute finality. 3 months later, the judge sentenced Warren to 6 years of formal probation for felony breaking and entering and criminal mischief. The court ordered him to pay restitution of $12,000 to cover the door replacement, the emergency response fees, and my legal costs. The community fallout was far worse than the legal one. His country club membership was quietly revoked. The private equity firm blacklisted him. The grand illusion he had spent his entire life building evaporated overnight. He was exposed not just as a liar, but as a vandal. 6 months after the arrest, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. The return address was Warren's small apartment. I opened it. It was a 4-page letter written in his sprawling handwriting. He did not apologize for smashing my door. He did not apologize for trying to steal my home. He wrote about his stress, his age, and how a daughter should forgive the man who gave her life. He tried to pull the old strings of guilt, claiming he did it all because he wanted to leave a legacy for the family. The hollow echo of his manipulation rang right off the page. I did not feel anger. I did not feel sadness. I felt nothing at all. I dropped the letter directly into the paper shredder and went back to making breakfast. My life now is unrecognizable from the chaos of my past. Daniel and I spend our weekends on the lake, surrounded by friends who celebrate our victories instead of trying to claim them. We host dinners for people who ask before they come over, people who bring wine instead of demands. This is my chosen family. They respect my peace because they respect me. If you are watching this and your stomach is tied in knots because my story sounds a little too much like your own, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The hardest thing to accept about a toxic parent is that their love is entirely conditional on your compliance. When a narcissist looks at you, they do not see a separate human being with dreams, boundaries, and rights. They see an extension of their own ego. They see a tool And when the tool stops working for them, they will try to break it. I learned 3 brutal rules through this nightmare, and I want you to carry them with you. Rule number 1 is the grief of access. When toxic family members accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, or of turning your back on them, they are not actually mourning the loss of your relationship. They do not miss your laugh. They do not miss your company. They are grieving the loss of free access to your money, your time, and your energy. They are angry that the bank is finally closed. Rule number 2 is the myth of the civil matter. We are conditioned to handle family abuse behind closed doors. We are taught that involving the authorities or the legal system is a betrayal of the bloodline. But boundaries without legal or physical enforcement are just gentle suggestions to a predator. Never let biology be an excuse for a crime. If a stranger tried to hijack your property and smashed your windows, you would call the police immediately. The DNA you share with the person throwing the rock does not make the glass any less broken. Secure your life on paper. Rule number 3 is the absolute price of peace. Healing is not a beautiful, soft process. Sometimes it requires you to be ruthless. Sometimes the cost of a peaceful life is accepting that you will forever be the villain in a toxic person's survival narrative. Your family might tell stories about how cruel you are. They might paint you as the monster who walked away. Let them keep their fictional story while you keep your actual peace. The effort you spend building a safe life is not a debt you owe to the people who made you feel unsafe in the first place. How many keys to your own life have you handed over just to keep the peace? How many times have you shrunk yourself down so someone else could feel tall? And what will it take for you to finally change the locks you are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you? Even if you share a last name, drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Stay strong, protect your house, and never be afraid to close the door. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there wondering, how did it take her 36 years to finally lock him out? Why did she tolerate a father who treated her like an unpaid property manager for so long? Let me stop you right there. Megan was not weak, and she was certainly not stupid. She was caught in what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, or the slot machine effect. When you grow up with a narcissistic parent, they do not punish you 100% of the time. If they did, you would simply walk away. Instead, they give you tiny, unpredictable crumbs of hope, a rare compliment, a fleeting moment of pride, just enough to keep you pulling the lever, hoping for a jackpot of unconditional love that is never actually coming. Megan endured the exhaustion because she was conditioned from childhood to believe her worth was tied to what she could provide. But the moment Megan finally woke up, she executed an absolute masterclass in psychological and financial self-defense. Let us break down her smart moves, because this is exactly how you handle a toxic manipulator. First, she used the audit strategy, scammers, narcissists, and entitled relatives thrive in the gray areas of social politeness. They rely on you keeping quiet because you do not want to make a scene. Megan destroyed Warren's illusion not by arguing with him, but by sending the actual legal property deed directly to his lead investor. Concrete. Documented proof is absolute kryptonite to a liar. Second, she focused on building the case. She did not just rely on changing a digital smart lock and hoping for the best. She went straight to the sheriff and filed a formal documented trespass order before the real confrontation even happened. She proactively removed the family dispute loophole that police often use to avoid getting involved. By the time Warren smashed that sliding glass door, he was no longer just a toxic dad having a tantrum, legally. He was a documented felon committing a break-in. Finally, let us talk about the buyout. Sweeping up that broken glass, dealing with the police, and paying the emotional toll of permanently blocking her enabling siblings. That was not a loss. That was the price of her buyout. She bought her total, uncompromising freedom, and $12,000 in restitution was just the cherry on top. Here is the ultimate verdict. You cannot negotiate with someone who views your personal boundaries as an insult to their authority. Sometimes the best financial and emotional investment you will ever make is completely walking away from the people who share your DNA. And before you close this video, I want you to think about the word access, because that is what this entire story was really about. Warren did not want a relationship with Megan. He wanted access to her cabin, access to her labor, access to her reputation, access to the proof that his life still looked successful from the outside. He did not care about the 7 years she and Daniel spent rebuilding that property from rot and broken pipes. He did not care about the aching backs, the blistered hands, the sacrificed weekends, or the private pride they built into every wall. He saw the finished result and decided it should serve him. That is what entitled people do. They ignore the work, then demand the reward. They will not help you build the table, but they will sit at the head of it. They will not carry the lumber, but they will pose in front of the finished house. They will mock your career, your choices, your discipline, your patience, and then the moment those very qualities create something valuable, they suddenly call it family property. But let me be very clear. Someone else's ego does not become your emergency. Someone else's lie does not become your responsibility to protect. And someone else's embarrassment is not a valid reason for you to hand over the keys to your life. The most chilling part of Warren's text was not the demand for bourbon or a deep clean. It was the sentence, "Do not be there. You will ruin the optics." That one line revealed everything. Megan was not invited to her own home because the truth of her existence interfered with his performance. He needed the cabin, but not the woman who owned it. He needed the lake view, but not the daughter who built the life behind it. He needed the illusion of success, and she was only useful as long as she stayed invisible. That is the exact moment when a boundary stops being optional. Because if someone needs you erased in order to look powerful, they do not love you. They are using you as scenery. And this is where Megan's response became so important. She did not write a 5-paragraph explanation. She did not beg her siblings to understand. She did not try to convince Warren that he was being unfair. She understood something that takes many people a lifetime to learn. You cannot explain ownership to someone who believes entitlement is a title deed. So she changed the locks. That was not petty. That was clarity. Then she sent the deed. That was not revenge. That was documentation. Then she filed the trespass warning. That was not overreacting. That was strategy. Every step she took turned emotional chaos into enforceable reality. And that is exactly what toxic people fear most. They love vague arguments because vague arguments can be twisted. They love family drama because family drama can be reframed. They love phone calls, private guilt trips, and whispered pressure campaigns because there is no paper trail, but a deed cannot be guilt tripped. A sheriff's report cannot be emotionally manipulated. A security camera does not care who gave birth to whom. A shattered glass door does not become less criminal because the man holding the rock is your father. That is why documentation is not cold. Documentation is protection. And for anyone watching this who is dealing with a warrant of your own, please understand this. They may never admit what they did. They may never sit across from you and say, I used you. I lied about you. I stole from your peace. In fact, they will probably do the opposite. They will tell everyone you are cruel. They will rewrite the story. They will say you abandoned them, humiliated them, betrayed them, or destroyed the family. Let them talk. A toxic person's version of events is usually just a confession with the blame reversed. When they say you ruined the family, they often mean you stopped protecting the lie. When they say you changed, they often mean you stopped obeying. When they say you are selfish, they often mean you finally kept something for yourself. And when they say you went too far, they often mean your boundary finally reached the place where their manipulation could no longer cross it. Megan's siblings are a perfect example. Ashley and Jason did not ask for the deed. They did not ask for the security footage. They did not ask why their father was trying to use a property he did not own. They jumped straight into defending the family myth because the myth was more comfortable than the truth. That is what enablers do. They are not always confused. Sometimes they understand exactly enough to know that if they admit the truth, they will have to choose a side. And choosing truth would cost them access to the toxic person's approval. So they attack the boundary setter instead. They punish the person who exposed the fire, not the person who lit the match. That is why Megan blocking them was not cruel. It was necessary because peace is not just removing the main abuser. Peace also requires removing the chorus that keeps handing them a microphone. And maybe that is the lesson that hurts the most. Sometimes when you finally protect yourself, you do not lose one relationship, you lose the entire system that depended on your silence. The golden children, the family friends, the relatives who do not want to take sides, the people who privately know you are right but publicly ask you to be nicer because your truth makes dinner uncomfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. Your life is not a stage built for other people's image management. Your home is not a prop. Your bank account is not a community resource. Your emotional energy is not an unlimited family trust. And your forgiveness is not a storage unit where toxic people can hide every consequence they created. The beautiful thing about Megan's ending is that her victory was not loud. It was not a courtroom speech or a dramatic confrontation at a holiday table. It was a quiet lake. It was Daniel beside her. It was friends who asked permission before visiting. It was dinners with people who brought warmth instead of demands. It was a cabin that finally belonged not just legally, but emotionally. That is real healing. Not proving everyone wrong, not forcing your father to become the parent you needed, not waiting for your siblings to apologize. Healing is when their chaos no longer gets a key. Healing is when the phone lights up and your nervous system does not collapse. Healing is when you can stand inside the home you built and feel safe in your own walls. So ask yourself tonight, who still has a key to your peace? Who walks into your life without permission and expects you to clean up before they arrive? Who uses guilt as a spare key under the mat? And what would happen if you finally changed the locks? Because the truth is, some people will never respect a door until it refuses to open. If this story reminded you of someone, I want you to write it down. Maybe not in the comments right away. Maybe just in a notebook. Write down what they take. Write down what they demand. Write down what they call you when you say no. Patterns become much harder to deny when they are sitting in black ink right in front of you. And if you are ready, share your Change the Locks moment below. Your story might be the reason someone else finally stops calling abuse a family misunderstanding. Subscribe for more stories about toxic parents, financial boundaries, and the quiet power of reclaiming what was always yours. And never forget this: the people who only love you when the door is unlocked are not entitled to a key. If you have ever had to change the locks on your own life to protect your peace, I want to hear from you. Drop your survival story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more real-world strategies. And remember, your peace of mind is the one asset you never let anyone borrow.